Welcome to Skip the Queue, a podcast for people working in or working with visitor attractions. I'm your host, Kelly Molson. Each episode, I speak with industry experts from the attractions world. These chats are fun, informative, and hopefully always interesting. In today's episode, I speak with Mark Ellis, Head of Visitor Experience at the National Memorial Arboretum. We discuss their brand new augmented reality experience, tips for other attractions thinking about investing in new technology, and the Memorial Woodland being created in partnership with the National Forest, set to commemorate all the lives lost during the pandemic. If you like what you hear, you can subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, and all the usual channels by searching Skip the Queue. Good morning, Mark. It is absolutely lovely to speak to you for the first time today. I feel like we've chatted a lot on Twitter.
I know, Kelly. It feels like your voice is very familiar, and likewise feels like we've chatted a lot. So it's a delight to be here. Thanks for asking.
You are very welcome. Before we start, actually, I would like to say a very public thank you to you, Mark, because I think that you are one of our most engaged listeners. And that really means a lot to us. I think every episode that we put out, you always go to a lot of effort to kind of tweet about it and say what you liked about it. And you tag people in on our Twitter account who you think that might be really interested in listening to it. And I'm really, really grateful to that. So thank you.
Oh, thanks, Kelly. Maybe I'm just a frustrated marketeer at heart.
Maybe, but I'm gonna take it that you're a Skip the Queue.
I am. No, it's a fabulous podcast,
supporter.
and it's helped and inspired us a lot, particularly over the last 12 months. So no, I only retweet and tag because it's so brilliant. So thank you.
Well, that is lovely to hear. Thank you. But that doesn't mean that you don't get away with answering some of my quite mean icebreaker questions, unfortunately. Okay, let's go in. When you hit the dance floor, what is your signature move?
Oh, I'm the world's best dance dancer. I am. I've got all the. I move my hips left and right, left foot forward, right foot forward. Bit of funny stuff going on with the arms, and then if we get some electro funk going on, the arms are pumping up in the air as well. Yeah. Electro
funk. All right, I'm going to remember.
Late
I'm going to remember that.
At a festival in a field with a few pints of cider. Oh, no one dances better.
I feel like we're going to need a demo of this when we're all allowed to meet properly in real life. We need to see this, Mark.
We'll do it.
Okay. If you were in a zombie apocalypse, which, I mean, considering what's been thrown at us the last year and a half, I mean, that could happen. Who would you want on your team?
Oh, I'd have the Doctor, obviously. No problem too bad, no villain he can't defeat, with a bit of wit and panache and charm. He or her, whichever incarnation of the Doctor it happens to be. I started with Tom Baker, love David Tennant, love Matt Smith. Jodie Whittaker's taken it to new and brilliant places. So, yeah, I'd have the Doctor every time.
It's a really good choice. Good choice. Okay, good. Okay, and what is the strangest gift that you have ever received?
Bootlaces.
Someone bought you bootlaces.
Yeah,
was that a birthday present?
That was Christmas present. That was the year when I bought my lovely, fantastic, gorgeous wife some diamond earrings, and she bought me some bootlaces.
Wow.
This was probably, I don't know, 15 or 20 years ago. She did tell me that she was busy making me something. I've no idea what, and I'm still waiting. So yeah, the bootlaces. Bootlaces were a classic.
Okay, so she bought you something to unwrap.
Yeah.
With the premise that there was something else coming.
To be very fair, just before Christmas, I broke a pair of bootlaces and my boots were held on, with a knotted bit of string. So it was practical and thoughtful and considerate and practical. So, it was a very good gift.
This is what us women do. Always thinking ahead. We knew that was going to happen. Okay, Mark, what is your unpopular opinion?
Well, before that, Kelly, I've got an icebreaker for you because I like to turn the tables. So your podcast is brilliant, and you have that uncanny knack of making it feel like it's just a chat between you, your guest, and a listener, and that pulls everybody in. So if you could have coffee and a chat with one broadcaster, dead or alive, who would it be?
Oh my gosh. I was not expecting to be tested this morning with an ice. Nobody's done this to me yet.
I'm so sorry.
Not without preparation anyway. Who would be the broadcaster I would sit down and speak to? There's quite a few that I can think of, but I'm going to go current because I really love this person. I'm going to say Greg James from the BBC Breakfast Show. And I know that I have, stolen his unpopular opinion segment, which hopefully he won't find out about at any point. Or maybe he will, and he'll really appreciate that, I'm inspired by him. But I just think he's great. I just think he's really fun. What he's done with that breakfast show, it's completely transformed it. He's also a local lad. So he's from Bishop Stortford originally, and I'm from Waltham Abbey, which is not too far, but we live in Saffron Walden now, and the office is in Sawbridge. So I feel like we would be friends because we're from the same kind of area. Do you know what I mean?
Excellent.
We could sit down, have a pint. We should definitely be buddies, Greg, if you're listening.
Brilliant. Great choice. Well done. And sorry about that. I'll behave myself as a guest now.
Be right as well, Mark.
So unpopular opinion. I thought long and hard about this and didn't know whether to go with the incredibly trite or something a bit more meaningful. And actually, somebody said something to me over the weekend that just sparked me going with this one, which is when people go with the customer service advice of treat other people like you like to be treated yourself, which really winds me up. Because do you know what? Why don't we treat other people like they want to be treated? So, if I treat everybody like I treat myself, then I'm going to disappoint an awful lot of people. And my case in point would be if I was running a restaurant, which I do as part of my job, I don't eat fish. I don't like fish. I've never liked fish. So if I treat everyone like I want to treat myself, there'd be no fish on the menu. Our incredibly popular Fish Friday would be a bit of a disappointment. So yeah, don't treat people like you want to be treated yourself. Find out how they want to be treated and go with that.
I love that. That's a really, do you know what? I've actually never thought of it that way, but you're absolutely right. Let's see what our listeners think. If you don't think that's an unpopular opinion, then, well, tweet us.
Yeah, we'll have a tweet war about it.
Yeah, let's have a tweet war about it. Okay. Thank you for sharing those, Mark. That's great.
No problem.
So I'm going to ask a little bit about your background because you've got it's quite interesting. So you've been at Twycross Zoo and English Heritage.
Yeah. And
now you're at the National Memorial Arboretum. Can you tell us kind of how you got to there, like how you ended up there? Yeah.
It's been, well, there's two versions of this story. One is it was a bunch of random factors that ended up with where I am, or I can both post-justify and sort of, describe a thought-out plan all the way through. The truth is when I was a little boy, I wanted to drive one of those cranes with a ball and chain on that demolishes buildings. Never got that chance, so ended up on a retail career path in high street retail, which was great. Worked for a company called Rohan for many years doing travel and outdoor clothing. Absolutely loved it. Really high service standards, really quality product, and that was great, and really learned some great customer service skills on that journey. Moved on from that, tales of redundancy and all the rest of it that many people's careers involve, and ended up moving to Twycross Zoo, as you say, initially as head of retail, taking those hard-won high street retail experiences into the visitor attraction area. Twycross Zoo's not far from where I grew up. I've known it for many, many years. It's a place that's special in my heart. So really, really enjoyed joining the team there, and pretty quickly realised that maybe the guest services, the services team could do with the benefit of some additional thinking. So ended up running the visitor services department as well, and that's really, I guess, where I made the hop over from pure retail into visitor attractions, and had a great time there. And zoos are just fantastic places to work. You've got thousands of animals doing the hard job of keeping visitors happy, and you're just making sure there's a great experience wrapped around that. That one ended up moving on from there. Again, financial crash of 2008 and restructuring and all the rest of it. So a bit of a hard hit on that one. And then worked for PDSA, the pet vet charity, for a while, which really enabled me to put completed finisher on my CV, which had been possibly missing up to that point. And I'm sure some of my colleagues will smile at the thought that I needed to prove I was a completed finisher, as I do tend to get slightly distracted by new and shiny things.
Okay,
and
well, you're an ideas person.
Yeah, very much so. Broad overview is the way I like to think of it. But managed a couple of projects at PDSA, an EPOS rollouts and reporting things. So some really detailed and good work with some some brilliant people there. Then got the chance. English Heritage had been through a period of not recruiting. They'd restructured what they were doing, and I was sort of in the first tranche of people. They went out and recruited a new group in, and some really brilliant people at English Heritage. Made some lifelong friends while I was working there. Certainly met some of your previous guests, Paul Griffiths, for instance.
Yes.
We shared about 3 months together at English Heritage. Actually, I started just to see he was going, and really did enjoy that. Looked after an area from Peveril Castle, Castleton up in the Peak District, all the way across Norfolk, Suffolk, the East Midlands. So a huge area with everything from 5,000-year-old flint mines, Grimes Graves in Thetford Forest, through to late 19th century windmills. So it really was the full breadth of English history. Thoroughly enjoyed that, and was settled to keep developing career there. And then the opportunity that National Memorial Arboretum came up. They were looking for a head of commercial operations at the time, and I have to say it took me about half a second to decide whether it was a jump I wanted to make. Again, Arboretum, we're 20 years anniversary this year of our official opening, so a relatively young site. So going from Neolithic flint mines to an arboretum that's only 20-year-old was quite a change. But yeah, join the team here, and working with, again, brilliant people. Hopefully making a real impact to the way people remember and enjoy outdoor spaces, and think about the past.
Great journey. I love that. I find it quite fascinating listening to how people get to where they are, because it's always kind of a bit squiggly, and I quite like that. There's always like a little bit of a twist and turn. It's never a straight line.
Yeah, I'm always slightly jealous. The people that say they thought about what they wanted to do when they were at school and they've followed a progression and done it. In some ways, I think, well done you. But I still don't know what I want to do when I grow up, other than drive that crane with the ball and chain on it. So
I wanted to be a dancer. See what the
future brings. Well, there you go.
Yeah, I wanted to be a dancer on the West End stage, because when I was younger, I was really into kind of like tap dancing and modern and acrobatics and stuff like that. And I thought, yeah, that's what I'll do. I'll be on the West End stage and I'll be a tap dancer. But then you start to get a bit older and you're like, I'm a bit of an average tap dancer, and I'm 5'2". It's probably never going to happen.
When we get together to do this big group dancing, you're really going to show me up with my dad dancing, aren't you?
Oh gosh, do you know what? The last time I put on a pair of tap shoes, I was about 21. I decided to go back and do it as like a fitness thing, and it was really fun. I could make a lot of noise with the the Blakeys on the bottoms of my shoes right now, but I don't know if I could pull off any tap moves. Let's see when it happens. Okay, so tell us. So if our listeners have never been to the NMA, tell us a little bit about what it is and what we can expect to find there.
Yeah, absolutely. And it's something that never comes over that well in the telling. It's a site that people have to come and really experience to appreciate. So that's a very open invitation to all your listeners from around the globe to head over to Staffordshire and to come and find us. Entry is free, so we're here ready to welcome you. And what you'd find is 150 acres of relatively young woodland. 150 acres, to put it into context, if you're doing your couch to 5k, then the 5k is about around the perimeter of the site. So it's a nice large site. Young Arboretum, an Arboretum being a scientific collection of trees. So we've got around 25,000 trees on site. Every indigenous species in the UK is here, and then we've got examples of trees from around the world as well. And dotted throughout the trees, you'll find it's now around 400 memorials to people that have served and sacrificed and have been lost, generally, on behalf of those of us that are still here. About 75% of the memorials are armed forces related, and around 25% are civilian organisations. So that includes police, fire, ambulance. We've got things like the WI, Salvation Army, Scouting. So we cover a very broad spectrum. The military ones cover specific campaigns, cover specific regiments and associations. And we're also very proud to be the home of the Armed Forces Memorial, which is the national memorial to all of our armed forces who have served and sacrificed. And that has carved onto the walls the names of the 16,000 members of our armed forces that have lost their lives in active service or through acts of terrorism since the end of the Second World War. So a very, very, very special place and very poignant. And it's easy for that to sound like it's a slightly somber place. And certainly it is a place where people do come and reflect and remember. But of course, the final part of remembrance is generally happy memories. We think about those that we've lost, and it always, brings a smile to the face to remember the good times. And actually, that's very much what the Arboretum is. It's a living memorial. It's a growing memorial. It's ever developing. It's ever changing. And when people leave the site, they often use words like uplifting and life-affirming and joyous. We have around 250 volunteers, and they really do bring the Arboretum to life. We're all about storytelling. And actually, without the stories, it's just memorials in Woodland. And it's the stories behind those memorials that really do tug at the heart and make people smile, make people laugh, and make people cry, and are the things that are so important. Our volunteers do a great job of telling those stories, and it's always done with a smile and a twinkle in the eye, and remembering some great times in amongst some amazing stories of heroism and service and sacrifice. So yeah, it's a very special place. We try and operate in the best possible way. We've got a couple of award-winning buildings on site. So our Remembrance Centre, our visitor centre with a large restaurant, a shop, our dedicated classrooms, it is very special. We've got our Chapel of Peace and Reconciliation, which was the first building on site where we're the only place in the country that holds the act of remembrance on a daily basis. And then in the building I'm talking to you from at the moment is our events and conference building, which opened autumn 2018, which is a state-of-the-art bespoke conference and events facility as well. So where we can host events for those that are carrying out remembrance activities, but also opens up corporate hire activities and those important income streams as well.
And I have to say that is where, if we do a kind of live Skip the Queue conference, that is where it will be held, Mark, isn't it? We've already
Brilliant,
had that,
absolutely.
that
the
mini
there.
Discussion, yeah,
and the coffee's great. So
I have to say, it comes across, what you were talking about in terms of it being a place of remembrance, but also a place of kind of celebration. That comes across really well on your website. I haven't actually had the opportunity to visit the centre yet. It is something that we've had this conversation about doing a little bit of a group visit, haven't we, with some of the other Skip the Queue podcast guests, which I'm sure we'll arrange for later on in the year. But it really does come across. It's a beautiful, beautiful venue. And it does come across as somewhere really, really special. And I think that that's important to get that message across. That it is very much about remembrance, but also very much about celebration as well. It doesn't have a somber feel to it, the way that you present it and the way that you talk about it. And I think that helps to draw more people to come to it, right?
Yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right, Kelly, and thanks for the feedback from an expert on the on the website. And in the words of our founder, who back in the mid-90s, we were always designed to be a place that commemorates lives lost and celebrates lives lived, and it's getting that balance right. And of course, a lot of that is very personal and depends for each individual on where they are in their particular journey. But no, the feedback we get suggests that we generally get that balance pretty much right. And we're, really pleased to be able to provide that for people.
So let's go back to what you were talking about stories, because I think that ties in really well with something that I'd like to talk to you about today. So you've recently launched a brand new app experience.
Yeah.
So, and I love the name of this. Very clever. So it's called the Arboretum. Hello. Good use of pun there. But it's augmented reality experience, and it takes families on a journey to learn about everyday heroes. This sounds fabulous. We had, going back to our kind of early first season of the podcast, we had Alex Book on from Arcade, who is an augmented reality, virtual reality specialist organisation. And they talked a lot about how your guests, maybe don't call them guests, call them players, because you're getting them to interact with the building and the environment that they come to. And it's such an interesting concept. And I just love what you've done with this, because it is a really kind of fun, interactive way of sharing those stories about the heroes that are part of that place that you're at. How did this come about? Like, where did the idea for this start?
Yeah, well, mother is the need is the mother of invention, isn't it? Is the phrase I'm clumsily trying to get my head around there. So we've always done Easter activities on site. Put some budgets aside and done something to attract people in. Those are often built around a trail. A lot of our memorials have animals on them, so we'll do an opportunity for children to go around, find the animals, put together an anagram, and come back and grab their little chocolate treat from the welcome desk, and always very popular. And actually, what works really well with that is getting families to interact with the memorials as part of the activity, and that's very much what drives a lot of what we do, is trying to make sure there's authenticity in there, and it gives people an opportunity to learn more about the site. So at the start of this year, of course, in January, we'd just gone into that extra lockdown, and it was a pretty bleak time, wasn't it? Mm-hmm. And we were talking about what we were going to do at Easter, when we had no idea what sort of numbers we'd be able to attract on site, but we still wanted something that would enable people to engage. And our head of participation and learning, a chap called Chris Ansell, who is a genius, came up with a brilliant idea of actually taking that budget, and instead of spending it on a physical manifestation on site, which perhaps we made to get people on site to involve, said let's go digital, and went away and came up with the idea of an augmented reality. I can't remember who first came up with the Arboretum idea, but as you say, it was an inspired piece of naming, and it does very much the same thing. There's three characters in the app: Blue, Kit, and Sam. They are 13 to 15, probably. So they're pitched for the slightly younger kids. It's that kind of aspirational age of the sort of 9, 10, 11-year-olds really want to be sort of the 13, 14, 15-year-olds. And we've given them a little bit of a backstory. So Blue is probably connected to somebody that served in the armed forces, doesn't necessarily articulate that, but she's really interested in memorialization and the site from that aspect. We've got Kit. They are a very eco-centered person. They like to be out in the woods. They're probably more interested in the bugs and the birds and all the rest of it. And you have to work quite hard to get their loyalty and their friendship. But once you've got that, they're going to be, incredibly loyal and friendly towards you. And then we've got Sam, and he's the, get in there and do it, and, action first, think later. He happens to have a pathetic leg, but that doesn't stop him getting stuck in and doing things. Probably, if there's something going a bit wrong and a bit awry, it's probably Sam that's in the middle of that. So we created these characters, and then we've created 8 locations around the site where there's a visual thing that you scan with your phone, and 1 or 2 or 3 of the characters pop up and they get you to do an activity. And some of those are centered around the woodland. So there's one where there's some well-being. It encourages you to do some sort of forest bathing and listening to the sounds around you. There's some that's very much based on reflections at memorials. So in our poppy glade, you're read out a poem about loss and memorialization, and you think about and talk to the rest of your group about what that means to you. And then some are very physical. On the beat, which is an area dedicated to the police, you do a beat test. So you do shuttle runs for a minute, and you've got a minute, it times, and you see how many shuttle runs you can do. There's a hide and seek, there's some puzzle solving, so that there's a real mixture, something for everybody, and of course something that ties into the things that each of the 3 characters likes. So by the time families have done it, and then you can take photos through the app and then tag those and upload them onto social media as well. So it really is a good way of getting people to move around the site, taking some areas where perhaps people don't normally find things, and interact. You can come back and do them again. And the really good thing is we launched this at Easter. So normally that budget that we spend on Easter activities, we'll do peak activity over the Easter weekend, and then a little bit more for the 2 weeks of the school holidays. And we have the added complication, we're right on the border of 4 counties here, and they all have different school holidays. So the Easter holiday actually spans 3 weeks of time, and I'm sure we're not the only people with that complication. But with this, we took that money and we've run the app from Easter, and we'll finish it at the end of June, just after Armed Forces Day, which is a big weekend for us. So it's covered sort of a 3-month period, and it's in the bag. We can always bring it back out and run it again in the future. And also we have the 3 characters who you never know might feature in activities and on-site interpretation in the future. My aspiration is we'll have models of them that appear in the shop at some time.
I love that. I love that there's that longevity to this thing that you've created, because I had no idea about the how difficult that would be to plan your activities around all those different Easter holidays as well.
Yeah.
But also it feels like it's something that could just run and run and run. You've put a window on it that it's going to end in June. Did you say June? It's going to
end of June. Yeah.
But that's something that, potentially people would engage with all year round, depending on when they come to the site. So, it's lovely that you've been able to invest so well in something that you can bring back, and you can bring back year on year and maybe tweak and stuff.
Yeah. Absolutely. And one of the really nice things, well, I think the characters are very authentic. As I said, they've all got that backstory. They've got very different personalities. I think they're all relatable in different ways. And we actually got a young person to design them. We wrote a design brief, and a young person got hold of that, and she produced some characters which we had a look at and thought, you know what, she's pretty much nailed that. So then worked with the app developer and designers, and they came back to her on several occasions and used her designs going forward. And as a bit of a skip the queue exclusive, I'm really proud because I know that young person particularly well. So it was my daughter that actually did those initial designs, and it's really great. And I think something that really excites me is each of the characters has some form of protected characteristic in there within their story, and it's such a non-issue for my daughter's 14 next week, and it's such a non-issue. It's just you want people of a different ethnic background, or you want somebody that's got a disability, or you want someone that's non-binary. Yeah, fine. This is what they're going to look like. And that's the real hope for the future, isn't it? It is that hopefully, as we pass on to future generations, and part of what we do here is passing on the baton of remembrance to future generations, so we're very engaged with working with young people, is hopefully that just sort of acceptance of things that older generations have had to work hard to understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I think what's really interesting is that you've actually engaged with someone of that age to say, what would you want? What would you want to see? How would you want these characters to be? Because that's something that I think, potentially a lot of organisations don't necessarily do. We're all guilty of it. We design a website and we're testing it, but we're not potentially the user who should be testing it. So you need to think broadly about who your audience is and how you engage with them from the start of a project like this. Yeah,
absolutely. And, it was a proud dad and all the rest of it. And it was purely chance, working at home. I just said to her, look at this brief. What do you think? But what it was the next stages that really were the eye opener for me, is when the initial designs came back, we showed them to her. And it was just the little things, like particularly it was Blue, the girl character that was designed first, and Harriet, my daughter, the eyes are just a little bit too big and the lips are just a bit too full, and and effectively, it wasn't childlike enough. It was that kind of, probably slightly more Disney-fied aspirational image that perhaps isn't the healthiest for us to be pursuing. So, and it was subtle. I mean, it was a great design. We'd have signed it off and it would have been fine. But just that, getting a younger person just to shape that final design, I think, really has given it that added layer of authenticity. And we're very proud of what we've ended up with.
Oh, you should be. I think it's fantastic.
But the real secret was Chris's idea to come up with it in the first place, and to make the app work so well and tie it into the authenticity of the memorials. That's what makes it the really special thing.
Completely. And I've got a list of questions here that I wanted to ask you, why an app, why augmented reality, but you've answered them so perfectly in the sense that, you had these challenges, and actually this digital application that you've developed solved those challenges. It solved the issue of the various different Easter holidays that you've got. You've now got something that's got longevity to it. You've got something that people are really engaging with. To ask you about kind of what the objectives were to start with, my assumption is that it was about engaging people with the different aspects of what the Arboretum means to people, those stories behind it, and like you say, getting them to explore areas that they might not necessarily always go to. If they're coming back time after time, they might have their favorite places. What do you think that the impact or the results of that have been so far? Is it a bit too early to tell, or can you see?
No, we've had some really positive feedback. We've had some really good download numbers. So, it's reached a large number of people. Not enough, because like everybody else, we've not got enough people on our sites at the moment with capacity constraints in place. And it's strange, isn't it? It's actually judging things not necessarily on the straight metrics that you use in the old world of actually, what does good look like now? But no, we've had some really good feedback. We've seen people, looking at some memorials in a bit more detail. We've had people on dwell time is up on site. People just saying it's been great. The kids have loved it. It's given us something to do. We don't charge for it. It's a free app and a free to enter site. I think it's got that educational twist to it as well as being fun. So, I think it's ticked a lot of boxes. But actually, just seeing kids, run up and down, seeing how many shuttle runs they can do in a minute is great to see. I'm
definitely going to test that out. Can we because it might be a little bit later in the year, can we just reactivate it for that day when we come? Because I want to do the shuttle runs.
There is a rather sad picture kicking around somewhere that Chris took of me doing the shuttle runs in the rain when we were testing it. So
I think we need to see that on Twitter.
To the cause.
We need to see that on Twitter, Mark.
I'll see if I can drag it out.
If there's no photos, then it didn't happen.
Fair point.
And what kind of tips could you offer for if there is any organisations that are thinking about investing in this technology for whatever challenges they have that they want to overcome? What would be a few tips that you could give them about how you would approach that process?
I think it's we want to get out of it first. So, we started with an idea that we could do augmented reality, but then the next thing was sitting down and saying, who's it for? What are the characters? What are the backstories? What's the authenticity? Which memorials? So actually, we knew what we wanted to do with it before we went and engaged with somebody to deliver it. And that meant that it was a very specific project scope. When we went out to tender with it, we knew exactly what we wanted to get out of it, which probably stopped mission creep and somebody saying, oh, you could do this, that, and the other. And it meant that when it came back, we weren't the quality of the digital experience is really, really good, but we weren't chasing Pixar quality output from it. We knew it was delivering what we wanted. Probably not as expensive as perhaps people think. So with that tight scope, it didn't cost much more than we'd normally spend on our Easter activities, with that added benefit of a bit of longevity in there. So yes, it does cost money, but it certainly wasn't a bank breaker. And having a limited budget, again, when you go out to tender, gives people the opportunity to scope what they're going to give you against that. So yeah, I think authentic, know what you want, and explore the financial possibilities. It might be more within reach than perhaps people think it is.
That's really
and all this digital technology is becoming more accessible all the time, isn't it? So there are opportunities out there.
Yeah, it absolutely is. And I think you're right that it's about scoping what you want and giving people the opportunity to say, okay, well, we can do this much of it for that budget, or we can do this much for that budget. It's kind of like a starting point, isn't it? But yeah, it's good that you said about, don't be scared by new technology, because I think that there is still an element of overwhelm about they don't know how, people don't understand how much kind of digital costs. Yeah. And there's still probably a lot of education that we can do around that, definitely from a web perspective. And AR isn't anything that we do ourselves, but I think that it sounds quite frightening, doesn't it? It sounds like it's going to be a very big, expensive project, where actually what you've just described seems absolutely quite manageable.
And it's sweet. This is where I shamelessly introduce other products into the conversation, but it supports what we move on to, which we've just launched this week, which now run till the autumn, which is our Escape Challenge, which is where we take, and again, this is Chris's idea. He really is a genius.
You want to hold on to this, Chris? He sounds great.
Absolutely. Well, you should come on and be a guest for you sometime, Kelly. He's much better than me. But Escape Challenge, and again, this was necessity being the mother of invention. I said it right that time. Is last year we wanted something to bring people onto site, experiences, massive growth, escape rooms, massive growth. So actually taking the escape room concept and delivering it in an outdoor environment. So again, a series of memorials that you walk around with your puzzle book. There's clues at memorial. There's clues in your puzzle book. This is a paid for one, so we charge people to do this. 2 levels. One pretty tricky, but a family will probably work their way through it. The other one, pretty challenging. It's probably people that enjoy the odd cryptic crossword clue and those types of things. Takes 2 to 3 hours, 8 clues, and this year's based around our everyday heroes and people that have worked in emergency services. So it's based around the work the police do. We're dedicating the new UK Police Memorial on site this year, which is a spectacular memorial worth coming to see. So it's based around that, and basically there's a gang planning a bank heist, and you're going to try and head them off at the pass and solve the clues and solve the crime. So again, a real opportunity to learn more about memorials, and that you're looking for some really fine details of the memorials there and some of the symbolism and some of the stories that perhaps again you've walked past it a dozen times, never noticed that, so it just gets people to look. And that covers the RLNI, the police, some of the fire service, so a lot of the ambulance service, so a lot of the civilian organizations come through on this year's Escape Challenge. So
I love that.
Available live now. It'll be here when you come up, Kelly.
Getting that, good, because I'll do the easy one, obviously.
And also, actually,
we're doing that difficult one.
We put a package together for corporate groups that want to come and do team building events here. There's a corporate package built around that Escape Challenge as well, which is a great way to get execs to come and scratch their heads as well.
That's a really lovely idea as well, actually, because you've mentioned quite a few times that the Arboretum, it's free to visit, and actually a lot of these things that you're offering, they're free to do as well. So the challenge for you, I guess, is you need to drive revenue. You can't be based solely on donations, and charitable donations. Difficult at the best of times to get from people. So I think it's lovely that you're now starting to look at this, what you can offer people, and bringing different groups of people in to kind of build that revenue base. It's really great.
Yeah, no, and generally works very well for us. Summer Proms is a good one as well in August. Tickets go on sale this week, so look out for that.
He's getting all the plugs in. So there's something else that I want to talk to you about as well. Thank you for sharing all of that. I think that would be really useful for any organisation that is thinking about going through that process. But you've just announced something which I think is super, super wonderful, and I'd love to hear a bit more about it. So it's just been announced that in partnership with the National Forest, you're going to be creating a Memorial Woodland, which is a new woodland to commemorate all of the lives that have been lost during the pandemic. How amazing.
It's a privilege to be involved in a project like this. The last 12 months or so, of course, has been tough on absolutely everybody, and it's a tragedy that's still unfolding, isn't it? It is difficult, and there is a time when people want to come together and remember and reflect, and the Memorial Woodland is very much designed for everyone that's lost their lives as a result of COVID, and that includes the people that have missed diagnoses, haven't had treatment, have had their mental health irreparably damaged by it. So it's not just the people that tragically have lost their lives because of coronavirus, and the numbers of civilians that have lost their lives through coronavirus is now twice the number of civilians that lost their lives in the UK in World War II. This is it's massive, and we're very fortunate. We're in the National Forest, which is across this part of the Midlands, a project that's been running for 30 or so years to reforest this area. So that there's this area. We had a lot of clay pits, open cast mining, those kind of things, which are all being turned into country parks now. It's a lovely part of the Midlands, and we've got a long-lasting relationship with the National Forest Company. They've been asked about what they might want to do for memorialisation, and right back at the very start of coronavirus, people were contacting us and saying, what can you do? What will you do? What can be done? Fortunately, at around the same time, Tarmac, who are our neighbours, they're quarrying the land around us, and the land we're on used to be their quarry, and we had it off them in the mid 1990s on a 999-year lease on a peppercorn rent. There's 25 acres that sits right next to our site that they finished working with. It's been inert for a decade or so. It's scrubland and some old silt washing lakes. So they've now very kindly gifted that over to us as well, likewise on a 980-year lease on a peppercorn rent, which has been fabulous of them. So that's given us 25 acres where we can create the Memorial Woodland, and our aspiration is very much to make it a living memorial, something that becomes very, very special. And there'll be memorial woodlands all over the country, and absolutely there should be. And what we want to do is to create something here that is memorable, is special, is living, is developing. There's so many stories that have come out of the last 12 months. So be it the experience of all the key workers, the experience of the NHS people, the experience of those in care homes, the experience of children who've missed going around to friends' houses and play, and have missed the rites of passage of end of year school plays and all those. So many different stories, and actually try and bring those together in a living memorial somewhere to, and I've said it before, I'll say it again, commemorate lives lost and celebrate lives lived, and create something that really works in a very special way. We want it to include reflection areas, multi-faith, or people who know faith can come and reflect as well. And actually the Westminster Abbey are supporting us as well. We'll be holding a service there in the autumn to dedicate trees that represent all the different faiths from around the Commonwealth. So there'll be a service there that will dedicate those, and then those will be some of the very first trees that will be planted in the new woodland. So it's a wonderful opportunity, and yeah, we're working very hard to make sure that it's suitable and fitting for everybody.
Oh, I think that you could not have picked a more perfect location for it as well. It's really interesting that the things that we've talked about today kind of sum up exactly what the Arboretum stands for. We've talked about these really fun, engaging ways to look at the stories that you have there and kind of celebrate the land and the people. And then we have this wonderful memorial wood that's going to be developed to really commemorate everything that's happened in the past, 15, 16 months. It's fabulous.
Absolutely. And, that woodland will be very poignant and very special. But we also want it to be a place of joy and hope as well, and hope and looking forward and rebirth and regrowth. And President Biden said in his inaugural speech about healing and remembrance going together. And that's absolutely what we want to do. And, I'm very hopeful that in the future will be a woodland where, as well as the opportunity to reflect and remember, there'll be the opportunity to enjoy and have fun and play and celebrate as well.
Sounds perfect. When does the work start? When does this all what's the time frames?
Well, the work started a wee while ago.
Oh, it's in progress already. Great, yeah.
Absolutely. No, what we're hoping to do is we signed the lease on the land within the last couple of weeks. So, we're surveying the land at the moment and seeing what's there and what we need to do. We're hoping to, with the National Forest Company, start a public engagement piece this autumn to really get to understand what people want from it and what people's hopes and aspirations would be for the space, and then probably start the work at the back end of 2022 with a view to having visitors' feet on the ground sometime in 2023. So in arboreal terms, quite a short a short time scale. But hopefully from this autumn we'll be able to talk about people, and there is an area on our website dedicated to it. So if people want to know more or want the opportunity to get involved, pop to the National Memorial Arboretum website. There's a contact us form, specifically Memorial Woodland, on there as well. And we'll be absolutely delighted to have conversations with people, and even just going out and publicly talking about it. That's already opened up some really great conversations with lots of different groups that perhaps we normally wouldn't get a chance to speak to. So it's already beginning to develop its own opportunities and create interesting conversations for us.
I love that. Well, Mark, you've done my work for me, because what I was going to say is what we do is put all of the links to all of these things that we've talked about today into the show notes. So we'll have links to that specific page where you can get involved and find out a little bit more about what's happening there.
Fabulous.
And we'll put links to Mark himself, so you can find him on Twitter and you can find him on LinkedIn, and everything again that we've talked about today you'll be able to find in the show notes. Mark, we always end the podcast by asking our guests to share a book. Now, it can be a book that's helped shape your career in some way, or a book that you just love. So what have you got for us today?
Now, I know, Kelly, it upsets you when people go with more than one book, doesn't it? Because it breaks your marketing budget.
It does.
So I've got 43. I've got 43 recommendations for you. So the first 41 of which are books that I love. It's the Terry Pratchett Discworld series.
Okay, so, that's fine.
Yeah, absolutely. So you know what? Don't put those on your list. That really would break the bank. But I love the Discworld books. I love the slanted way he looks at the world. I love they just were. And there's not many management meetings where I probably don't quote Granny Weatherax or Sam Vines or somebody at some point. So I love those. The other 42 and 43. One is Tom Peters, the brand new 50, which is a small book that Tom Peters has done. It's been out for quite a while now. It might have been the late 90s, but effectively it's saying, think about yourself as a brand. It's got 50 tips in there for how you build your own personal brand. And I found that very useful, having switched jobs a few times, of actually saying, these are my core values. This is what I hold dear to me. And, that's what you get from Mark Ellis. Then it kind of helps when you're looking at new opportunities of saying, is the cultural fit going to be right? I know what I want out of a role, and making sure, the interview is a two-way process and it's going to tick the boxes for me. So that's one. The other one, which perhaps would be the one that you might want to put on your I Want Mark's book, but it's a book called Why We Buy by Paco Underhill. Paco Underhill is an American. He's done a whole bunch of research on customers' behaviour, particularly in retail. And I first came across this book in my retail years, but it absolutely carries through into visitor attractions. And he talks an awful lot about signage placement and product placement. And, if a gondola in a shop is just 6 inches too far out, then when you bend over to pick things off the bottom, people are going to brush past your backside as you're shopping that. So actually observing that and moving it 6 inches might increase sales off that gondola massively. He talks about signage and being shown a sign for an airport somewhere in a boardroom and saying that's no good, and taking it out and standing in the middle of a busy concourse and leaning up against a wall and saying, now can we see if that sign works? So it's a great book for that. I have to say the prose style irritates me greatly. So Paco, if you're listening, sorry about that. It's done in a very narrative way, and it's probably slightly condescending in places, and it's a really quick read. But the messages, I first read it probably 25 years ago, and again I refer back to it on a pretty regular basis in terms of those core messages. So yeah, Why We Buy by Paco Underhill would be my recommendation.
All right, well let's give that one away then, Mark, because that sounds really relevant. So as ever, if you head over to our Twitter account and you retweet this episode announcement with the words "I want Mark's book," then you'll be in with a chance of winning it. Brilliant. Good choice with the Discworld as well, I have to say. Good choice. So my great auntie Doris, who my extremely naughty Dachshund is named after, she was a huge Terry Pratchett fan, and I grew up with those books and reading them with her, and they bring back some really lovely memories when you talk about them. So thank you for putting that in my head today. Also, weirdly, my dad I don't know why I'm just sharing this with you today, but my dad was mistaken for Terry Pratchett one night when we took him and my mum out for drinks, and a barmaid came over and said, "You're him, aren't you? You're Terry Pratchett." And Dad was like, "I think he's dead."
That's awesomely cool, though.
It's not me. It does look a little bit like him, I have to say.
You see, that could be a plot from one of the stories, couldn't it?
Could be. Yeah, my dad reincarnated as Terry Pratchett. That's quite odd. It's because he's a hat wearer and he's got a beard. There
you go. That's all it takes.
Anyway, don't know why that came out, but thank you for putting that in my head as well. Mark, it's been so lovely to chat to you today. I've really enjoyed it. I think there's just some wonderful things that are happening at your attraction. I cannot wait to come and see it and meet you in real life.
Yeah, no, well, thanks for having me, Kelly. And as I've said before, you're welcome up here anytime at all. Look forward to seeing you.
Thanks for listening to Skip the Queue. If you've enjoyed this podcast, please leave us a 5-star review. It really helps others find us. And remember to follow us on Twitter for your chance to win the books that have been mentioned. Skip the Queue is brought to you by Rubber Cheese, a digital agency that builds remarkable systems and websites for attractions that helps them increase their visitor numbers. You can find show notes and transcriptions from this episode and more over on our website, rubbercheese.com/podcast.